Hello there, it's Fergus back with another teacher training video. On this channel, I focus on the Cambridge CELTA teacher training course. However, the ideas that I present here are applicable to many other English language teacher training courses, such as the CERT TESOL or a TEFL course. So stick with me in this one, and hopefully you'll find some interesting ideas and we can get a good conversation going. In this particular video, I am looking to discuss this idea of hubris. And does it exist in teaching? I'm going to talk about what is hubris, look at an example, and kind of like delve into the thinking behind it, and then see how we can maybe improve our careers as teachers, and of course, in the end, provide better lessons for our learners, because that is the name of the game after all. So let's jump into it. And as you can see here, the talk today is on, does hubris exist in teaching? So to get started, often on Facebook you see these kinds of examples of, thank you teacher, and often these are posted by teachers themselves or schools. And I'm a teacher, my mother was a teacher, I've worked with teachers I'm into my second decade of it, so I love teachers, I love teaching, I love education. It's a lifelong passion for me. So none of this is meant to denigrate their teaching profession in any way, shape or form. In fact, it's intended to try and improve it for all. However, as I said, this idea of thank you teacher and all these kinds of posts that you see on social media, as I said, are often posted by teachers themselves, and it can be a little bit, self-congratulatory. So, the idea here is we're going to try and get beyond this patting ourselves on the back and try and identify what are some of the subtle signs of it so that we can avoid it in our teaching career. So I'm going to jump into this post, in fact, this one that I found online on Facebook, and I'm going to read through it. But before I do, I think I should probably define my terms and talk about what is this hubris. So I just threw it into Google, and I got this definition here. So excessive pride or self-confidence. It does have a Greek etymology, and in Greek tragedies, you can find it as this idea of excessive pride toward or defiance of the gods, leading to nemesis. I won't read all of this, but have a look on Wikipedia and get deeper into the whole idea of pride and arrogance and its common usage today. It's often used in kind of religious kind of imagery, but it's not limited to just religious imagery. Really, the idea, it describes a personal quality of extreme or excessive pride. Sometimes the idea sometimes is expressed like, when you have a problem with a situation and you believe that it's the world has the problem with you rather than you having a problem with the world. One common example in language teaching of that is where people will think it's a kind of a discrimination that schools look for native speaking teachers, whereas schools are just businesses, and it's about supply and demand. Their client wants native speaking teachers, and therefore school will look to hire native speaking teachers. Now, again, slight disclaimer, it's not to have anything negative at all to say about non-native speaking teachers. In fact, in my own career, I've learned some invaluable lessons from non-native speaking teachers. For example, I remember doing my Delta, and I had many illuminating and eye-opening experiences speaking with two Polish colleagues of mine who just blew my mind in terms of insights that they had into pronunciation. They improved my teaching exponentially, I would say, on that topic for sure. So, however, if I were the type of teacher who said, "Oh, a school that wants non-native, that wants only native-speaking teachers," well, that's a kind of discrimination. In a strict sense, yes, it is a discrimination, but it's not the world is out to get you. And it also doesn't mean that there are no opportunities out there for non-native speaking teachers. There are many. Just be good at what you do, and you can take CELTA, you can become a language teacher, you can be very successful. And it's definitely not a barrier. It's just you have to do a little bit more. Unfortunately, you aren't you don't have the easy thing of just being able to speak the language without thinking about it. You had to learn it. But then in other ways, that's an advantage, because going through the process of having had to learn it, you can get into the student's shoes a lot more, and you probably know a lot more about the systems of the language, having had to study it. But that's just an example of where this hubris could kind of come up in some ways in our day-to-day kind of profession. But going back to this idea of the online posts, and these kind of thank you, self-congratulatory messages. I'm just going to zoom in on this one and zoom in on the message itself and just read it out, and I'll just give my thoughts on what's contained in there. I'm just going to read the whole message, and then I'll give my thoughts on it after that. So it says here, "Hello teachers, I have a suggestion. Let's for a moment stop rushing and take a minute to think. Let's try to ask ourselves what is really important. We are teachers. We have a responsibility not only for language knowledge. The teacher is the authority for students, no matter how old they are. If you are a teacher and you have students, it means they trust you enough to learn from you. Some of them put their dreams and hopes in your hands, then they follow your advice and work hard to impress you. So language classes are not just vocabulary and grammar. It is more than this. Teachers teach us how to understand different cultures, rules of suitable communication. Communication is the key to understanding personality and solving problems. Communications can survive lives. Teachers expand boundaries for students. Teachers give them freedom. I thank you, teachers, for your hard work." And then a sign off. So, on the face of it, these are very nice sentiments and, nice words. And, if you might think that I'm being a little bit cynical by saying that they are, self-congratulatory, patting yourself on the back. But really, I think it's worthwhile talking about, because there are some ideas in there that remind me of the idea of hubris, remind me of the idea of, too much pride, too much belief in your own authority, to use the word that was used in that post there. So, if I could just focus in on some of the examples there. If you're a teacher and you have students, it means that they trust you enough to learn from you. This is certainly true. There is a trust between students and teachers. However, that trust can very quickly be broken if you stop teaching them grammar, vocabulary, functional language, pronunciation, reading, writing, speaking, and you replace that with, for example, teaching them about what you might believe to be a socially important cause. Or maybe you turn the lesson into some kind of like life coaching, or, as it goes on to say later on, communication is the key to understanding personality and solving problems. If we have this belief that we are there to solve problems, then we could very easily find ourselves in over our head or out of our depth. Often students can be very open, and they may, start to tell you about things that are going on in their life, maybe a relationship issue or a job issue, or feelings that they have, or happiness, sadness. anything. And like, sure, while, taking the approach of just being, nice and positive, might feel like a good place that we're starting off from. We may not know everything that's going on in a student's life, and it's really not our place to get involved there. We're trained in our specific example to be language teachers, and that's what we know how to solve. Those are the kinds of problems that we know how to solve. We don't know how to solve marital issues or financial problems, or and again, you might say, well, actually, Fergus, I spent 10 years as a financial analyst or a financial consultant, and I do know how to solve financial problems. Fantastic if you do, but do that in a financial consultation, not in a language classroom. It's just not the appropriate place for it. And you might think, well, okay, my student is asking me about this. Well, I'll give you a little anecdote of where I kind of fell foul of this many, many, many years ago when I started out teaching. I had a student who every day I would come to class, and we had a really excellent rapport, and we almost never did anything from a textbook, anything from handouts. We never did any grammar. We never did any vocabulary or pronunciation work. All we did was I would sit down and just start to make some small talk, and then that would branch off into some kind of conversation, and then we would spend the rest of the lesson, about an hour, just talking. And I felt, this is easy, and this is going well. I have a nice rapport with the student. And then I was really shocked about a month or two in that my director of studies at the school where I was working called me and said, Fergus, I need to have a word. I've received a complaint about you. And I was like, what? Complaint? All my classes are going so well. I felt so good about it. I felt that I was just really, as they say, knocking them out of the park. But it was, in fact, this student had complained about me that there was no direction in the classes, that there was no language being focused on, or no skills being done. She said, Fergus is a nice guy, but I'm not learning anything, or it doesn't feel like I'm learning. It doesn't feel like he's prepared. It doesn't feel like he is teaching me language. He's there just to chat to me, and, I have friends for that. And it was really, first of all, my little ego was, or my big ego, or whatever size of ego I had was hurt. I was like, how could you go and complain about me after we had such a nice rapport going on? But as time has gone on, I realized that actually, I wasn't doing the job that I was being paid to do. And, this post that this thank you teacher post talked about, the student teacher trust, that they put their hopes and dreams in you. That's kind of breaking down the trust a little bit. So if we go back to the post here, it says, so language classes are not just vocabulary and grammar. It is more than this. And I'll say, I agree, but I disagree with what they're getting at. I agree it is more than vocabulary and grammar. There's also functional language, pronunciation, and the skills, reading, writing, speaking, listening. And that's it. It's not educating them about climate change. It's not educating them about this or that. It's not being there to talk to them about, like I said, the issues going on in their life. It's not any of those things. It is teaching them language. If you start to get into teaching them causes and starting to get into teaching them topics that are outside of the language realm, you're going to lose their trust, and rightly so, because you're bringing to them something that they didn't ask for. It's like, you own a pizzeria, and they say, okay, can I have the pepperoni? And you come out and you bring them some fish and chips. You say, here, eat that. It's really like that. They want a pepperoni. Either give them the pepperoni or say we've got no pepperoni. It's really as simple as that. If you start giving them fish and chips, they might say, okay, well, I was hungry, so I'll eat this, but it's really not what I wanted. And then they're not going to come back to you. They're going to go to the pizzeria down the road so that they can get their pepperoni. And the same thing goes for language teaching. If they come to you looking to, move from B1 level to a B2 level to prepare for an exam, to take business English classes, etc. And they end up, getting English language, they end up getting, sociology lessons or something masquerading as an English language lesson. They'll very quickly figure that out and you lose your student. And just to reiterate that point, that's not to say that you couldn't do a reading lesson that the reading is about climate change or that the reading is about whatever topic. Absolutely, but you still need to have a lead in. You need to have a gist question, scanning questions. You need to maybe pre-teach some vocabulary, and you need to have a follow-up productive skills task at the end of it. That's a reading lesson. And if it comes across that, their opinion is a wrong answer, then you're not being a language teacher, right? You're being a sociology lecturer or something like that. You're taking on extra responsibilities that you simply don't have. So let's just jump back to the post a little bit more here. So it says, after, language classes are not just vocabulary and grammar, it's more than this. Teachers teach us how to understand different cultures, rules of suitable communication. They don't. We don't teach about different cultures. I mean, we're not anthropologists, we're not sociologists, we're language teachers. Sure, I'm Irish, I taught in France, I taught in Spain, I taught in Brazil, I taught in South Africa, I taught in the United States and Canada. All of those are very different cultures, for sure, absolutely, no doubt about it. But I didn't go to any of those places expecting to know next to anything about their cultures besides some very superficial entry-level knowledge. When I went to South Africa, I could find it on a map. I knew who Nelson Mandela was, just about. I knew that rugby and cricket are popular in South Africa. I knew that they have lots of beautiful wild animals, but I know next to nothing, and I wouldn't presume to know anything more than that. So how could I then be still an effective teacher there? Well, first of all, not to have any hubris, not to have any pride, not to have any kind of sense of, oh yes, I know everything, you don't need to tell me anything, I kind of know already. But also just to have tact, read the room, as they say, just don't be overbearing, just be polite and friendly. That's it. Be open-minded, be humble. Tact and humility. That's going to be 99% of what you need to be an effective language teacher in an absolutely new culture. There's no expectation that you are in any kind of way a culture expert, whatever that is anyway. I can't imagine what that actually means to be where I come from in Ireland, the culture is different every 10 or 15 kilometers you go down the road. Here in Canada, where I live, the east is totally different from the west, is totally different from the north. Canada is an extremely, I guess they call it multicultural society. So there's so many cultures. It's hard to pin it down and say that, oh yes, I'm an expert on Nova Scotia culture. Well, Nova Scotia even itself has different parts to it and different cultures in it. So it's kind of a non-starter of a sentence. Also, this idea, teachers teach us how to understand different cultures and rules of suitable communication. I mean, if that means there's a difference between the way that you talk at a bar with your friends, and there's a difference from that to how you talk at a business meeting. Sure, that's fine. We do teach formality. That is definitely something that's taught in language teaching. However, the choice of words here, what's suitable, it's not really for me to say, it's for me to say this is formal, this is informal, but you choose what's suitable. I have I've had jobs where after some time it moves from being a very formal interaction with the people that I work with to much more informal, much more friendly. So it wouldn't be suitable to use extremely formal language, even though I'm in the workplace. I might be doing a business meeting. It might not be suitable to use this or that language in that situation anymore. So it's not for me as the teacher to say, yes, in the bank you must use this language and this language only, or to try and legislate for every situation. It's just not the case. The case is, here's what's formal, here's what's informal. That's something that we can say, and then it's up to the user of the language to decide what's suitable for the context that they find themselves in, the people that they're talking to, etc. This really reminds me of the idea of, teach learners how to think, not what to think, right? And I guess from a language perspective, that would be teach them how to say what they want to say, not what to say. Okay, I'll just say that one more time because I think that really hits the nail on the head. Teach them how to say what they want to say, not what to say. Okay, we don't want to restrict them. We want to give them some tools to go out then and use the language whatever way they need to in their lives. And, it goes on and on with this, communication is the key to understanding personality and solving problems. I mean, we need to be careful. It's not our role to solve problems and the key to communication. I mean, this is kind of very, it's nice language, but it doesn't have a lot of meaning behind it. Yes, in CELTA, for example, we use what's called a communicative approach, and that has meaning. Communicative approach basically means that you need to practice language where there's an actual reason to communicate. For example, it wouldn't make any sense to say, "Hey, Fergus, what's your name?" I mean, yes, you're practicing saying the words, but there's no communication there because you even said the answer in the question. A communicative approach is often summed up as being based on the idea of what's called the information gap. And there's something that the person you're talking to doesn't know, and then that requires the communication. So it's a bit more realistic. There are other aspects to it, of course, such as the contextualization of language, accuracy and fluency, all of these kinds of ideas as well. Teachers expand boundaries for students. Teachers give them freedom. I mean, no, they don't. I don't give anybody freedom. Maybe metaphorically, I expand their linguistic boundaries. Maybe, possibly, but hey, this kind of language again, it's so hubristic. I found in my experience as a teacher that the more humility I brought to my lessons, and the more my students responded to me, and the more successful that lessons were. So I didn't go into my lessons on any kind of crusade, on any kind of I'm here to set you free, I'm here as the key to your dreams and hopes. No, I'm here to help you with reading, writing, speaking, listening, and grammar, vocabulary, functional language, and pronunciation. That's what I'm here to do. And as long as that's very clear in my mind that that's what I'm here to do, then my lessons start going much, much better. After I had that experience many years ago where I received a complaint from my student, I started to think, okay, what is my job here? And as soon as I just started saying, okay, we can have some chit chat at the beginning of our lessons, that's great, that's rapport building, let's get down to work. That's what we're here for. We're here to talk about grammar. We're here to talk about vocabulary, functions, pronunciation, reading, writing, speaking, listening. Those are the things of language teaching. So, question of the day. before I get to the question of the day, please do like, share, subscribe. It really does help my channel to grow, and I would very much appreciate it. But I would also very much appreciate if you did go ahead and leave a comment and let me know in the comments, what do you think? Well, have you noticed hubris among teachers? How have you seen it? Do you think your role goes beyond teaching language? And if you do think your role does go beyond teaching language, let me know, why do you think that, and in what way does it go beyond teaching language? Where do you get this feeling from? You know, I always stand to be corrected on the things that I say, I guess, especially something that isn't, you know, specifically about a method or approach or a technique or a lesson format. This is more, I guess, about how we think about ourselves as teachers. So I'd really like to see your perspective. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think. Have you noticed this hubris that I'm speaking of? In what ways have you seen it? Do you think that your own role goes beyond just teaching? Is there more to it than that? And, you know, are there any pitfalls to this approach? So you can find me on social media, particularly Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Twitter, you can find me at Fergus Teacher. Facebook, you find my page at Integrated Skills. And Instagram, you find me at Integrated Skills ESL. You can, of course, also email me at fergustrainer@gmail.com. And that, you know, just leaves me to say, you know, so if you keep working to implement this approach, there's no doubt you'll gain confidence, win over more students, and teach much better lessons. You got this one. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.